Hello, it's Yvette Cameron from the Velocity Network Foundation. I'm so pleased to be interviewing today Nagaraj Nadendla. He's a Senior Vice President of Product Development at Oracle. Oracle is one of the founding members of the Velocity Network Foundation who have joined with others from across the industry to create the Internet of Careers. Nagaraj, I'm so happy to have you with me today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Yvette, for having me participate in this conversation. Look forward to great set of questions from you.
Well, we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. So let me start by asking you, with all of the investment across the marketplace, what's really driving all of these investments from HCM, from education tech providers in self-sovereign digital credentials? What's going on? What's driving that?
Yeah, I'd say over the last decade or so, as I've interacted with customers globally, one thing that is unequivocally unacceptable, right, for them is people misrepresenting credentials or outright lying about them, right? And there are some market trends too. We operate a fairly broad ecosystem as part of our talent acquisition. For example, providers like Checkstar and HighRight, they're part of our ecosystem. They put out some research periodically. Checkstar in 2020, they put out a market trend. 78% of job applicants say they fudge or outright lie in their either resumes or interviews or references. And the same thing from HighRight. This was a couple of years ago. And their research points out 85% of employers caught applicants fibbing on their resumes, right? These are staggering numbers. And if you can imagine closer to home for us, while there's various trends across the globe, we have a couple of classic, these are publicly visible scenarios that happen in front of us. In 2012, Yahoo CEO Scott Thompson, you know, his college degree was found to be erroneous, or it was embellished. So there's examples like the same thing with Judge O'Leary, Notre Dame football coach, and we can go on and on. And while employers tend to be a little bit more forgiving about other things, for some reason, credentials are really, that's like a black and white no-no, right? So, and if we can kind of step back a bit across various industries, you think about public sector, and even more recently, the way learning has become more discrete, individuals taking up learning on their own for various skills development. There's a very diverse set of ways in which people are obtaining and keeping their credentials current, right? From the traditional licenses to certifications to continuing education, particularly highly regulated industries. And so associations like, for example, AICPA that manage certifications, or you think about self-learning with Coursera, LinkedIn, and so many other providers that participate in this. It's becoming increasingly important, right? That the need for digital credentials and a way for that to be managed more comprehensively, more cohesively, to avoid the kind of trends that Checkstar and HighRight talked about, I think that's key. So yeah, I think there's absolutely a compelling need for self-sovereign credentials. And I would posit that, it's also to foster a brand identity, particularly for the ones that actually play it straight.
Very compelling. I remember a few of those situations with the CEOs and other leaders who had fabricated some of their credentials. That's those are some very good points that you've brought up. You also brought up the point of brand, and I think that leads me to my next question for you, Nagaraj. Oracle could have chosen to build its brand by building a proprietary approach, but instead you chose to join the Velocity Network Foundation, joining with other industry titans to develop an industry-based approach for this Internet of Careers. Why did you choose an industry-based approach over a proprietary play?
Good question. Not that we didn't think about this, honestly. I'd say at the end of the day, all of us individuals, we need to make a, we have a need to make a living and feel fulfilled. At the same time, we also want to know, particularly in this day and age with data privacy being such an important consideration, we want that to be private and safe and only be disclosed where we want it to be disclosed, right? Um, and I just cannot emphasize the privacy of individual as things get more stringent across the globe. GDPR, every country that we come across as part of our Oracle business, everybody's throwing up their own data privacy laws. Ultimately, I think it's about enabling an individual to manage their credential, identity, brand. As we've talked about, for businesses, I think clearly having the right talent is imperative, right? Alongside that, need to be, well, we can all kind of compliance is sometimes a bad word, but compliance and regulations are important.
Hmm.
The security is another factor. So a verifiable credential ecosystem provides assurance at so many levels, and you know eh, the trust it creates and opens up significant new opportunities. Speaking about Oracle specifically, our customers are diverse, and a proprietary solution I think would be very limiting for them. And if you kind of and our goal and our desire is to connect our customers as we've done across various technologies that they consume from us, connect them with standards-based solutions and deliver a digital experience, right? I think equally, and sometimes not only vendors but also customers forget, you have to think about um, what is the experience an individual would have. And this is true for candidates, right? If there are a multitude of proprietary repositories, I think we end up with a really terrible candidate experience, because then I'm managing individual repositories based on a particular vendor's choice of how they want to manage it. And that's just one aspect. I think for issuers of credentials to consumers, there's so much more complexity with proprietary repositories. That's why we're absolutely all in to participate and partner with and be a part of this foundation.
So interoperability and ecosystem are critical in the design of the Velocity Network Foundation. I'm curious as to your thoughts on two other aspects of the design. One is the fact that Velocity is being built as open source, not as a proprietary technology play, but fully open source. And the governance of the foundation itself, again, not proprietary, but it's democratically led. Led by members of the organization elected to the board of directors. I'm curious what your perspective is on the benefits of those two particular aspects of Velocity.
Great question. I think it's really I'm as Oracle, we're glad to see this be an open source foundation enabled governance model. If you think about it, the ability for individuals to opt in a federated way, I think we think will lead to a very frictionless consumption model. Avoiding legalese, partnerships, and other potential friction points and gating factors. Right. We also think nonprofits can operate more freely. They can free themselves of profit motives and things of that nature. So our primary view on this is from an interoperability perspective. We, as Oracle, want to leverage and encourage open standards and open standards-based processes, which in turn leads to use of ease of use and consumption for all constituents.
Mm-hmm.
I come from development background, so over the years, over the last 30 plus years, I've seen, just with the introduction of open source, various foundations propagating or making open source software available, just in the last decades, think about the innovation that has been fostered by the examples of, I'd use Apache as one example. There's many foundations like that. The innovation that it has fostered and the speed with which it's happened is just phenomenal. It's amazing. And not to mention, I've worked in many startups. The cost of development has significantly gone down because of this. I'm not saying every aspect is applicable in the scenario. However, what I'm looking forward to is this model should foster innovation, ease of use. Um, maybe not so much on cost, but I think um, it should create that marketplace for various constituents, from issuers to consumers to employers and everybody else.
So open source, accelerating innovation, I completely agree. I think we're going to see designs and approaches in the future that we can't even conceive of today. So that's actually really exciting. Let me ask you another question, Nagaraj. Today, in today's environment, what do you think are the toughest challenges that employers are facing that can be addressed with Velocity Network and this new approach to the Internet of Careers?
I think one of the things we already touched upon, which is, validated credentials, I think will go a long way in helping employers and employees make that strong connection. Every organization that we talk to, talent is their lifeblood. Um, you know, so I think that the way they connect, I think, will materially benefit. Um, uh, we as providers as well, and the ecosystem, I think, will benefit from having the right credentials, and perhaps even with the self-service education that's happening. If participants like Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, and variety of other providers, specialized providers, they all participate in this network, we could get down to the next level, which is skills, right? Individual skills that people can add to their overall credentials, digital credentials. It can drive, I think, better matching of talent to opportunities, which I think is still a fundamental problem that many employers struggle with. And all of us are trying to help them in that direction. So I think there's many things. So if I have to summarize, the Internet of Careers, I think it'll expand the talent pool of qualified and perhaps more importantly, verified talent and individuals, right? And I think, if I have to, since we talked a little bit about skills, another problem I think employers typically face is also having a pulse on the availability of what skills and talent do I have versus what I need for today and into the future. And I think that's a problem I feel strongly that could be also um, solved, or at least we move in the direction of helping organizations have a better pulse on skills gap. And we ourselves are making some investments along the direction. Now, one caveat I want to throw out is we're the pandemic has appended our lives, and even before the pandemic, the way work gets done, I think, was shifting in front of our eyes. So you know, who knows? This might change the seismic shifts that were happening might get accelerated with the pandemic, and with the help of foundation and this Internet of Careers and digital credentials, hopefully can accelerate the adoption. On the other hand, who knows? It's hard to say. Businesses could hunker down, and um, but one thing we feel, as a trend that's happening, we feel quite strong and sure about is, I think, the model of self-learning and skill development, I think, is accelerated during this pandemic, and I don't think it's going to change.
I completely agree with you on all of those points, and especially that last one. Lifelong learning has never been as obvious and important, mindset than now, as we've come into and through this pandemic situation. So great vision for how this approach can solve problems. I guess the question is, how do we get there? So you've been in this space for a long time. What advice would you give to HR leaders who are looking to prepare for these benefits, but also the disruption that's going to come from the introduction of self-sovereign digital identities into the workplace? So what advice do you give?
Yeah, uh, being in my role, we have a great roster of customers, really forward-thinking HR leaders and customers that look at technology as a way to solve real-world problems. So, you know, I think every journey, like something like this, would starts with a bold first step. And I think you and I've had some conversations in the past where it's important to foster adoption, right? I think HR leaders should think about taking this first bold step in this direction. Some are, you know, as I said, forward thinkers. They'll, you know, adopt early. Others are fast followers, and of course, there's always a handful of laggards. What I'd suggest is they be bold and adopt early, and there's a strong reason for that in my mind. And this is, you know, there's always a, particularly with this, you need issuers to issue credentials. You need individuals to have their credentials hosted, right? And be on a, of course, on an opt-in basis, they'll make them visible to others. Then you need employers to participate, vendors to participate, but somebody has to start that. And I feel this squarely lies on, as much as technology enables these things, I think HR leaders should take that bold step. Without them taking the bold step, I don't think the rest of the dependencies would fall in place. Um, so I think it's important for HR leaders to enable the digital credentials, consume them in their talent acquisition processes or talent processes, or, you know, their compliance needs or others. And that, I think, can be the motivator for every aspect of the foundation, the way you make these capabilities available within the network. I think, you know, to me, that's a key driver. So I think we need HR leaders to be bold and enable this, um, so that ultimately, the in my mind, I think the ultimate driver for this would be the adoption will drive a better talent marketplace overall.
Well, fantastic. I got to tell you, I think about the way that you've painted a vision of the future for the technology to evolve, for HR to take a leadership role, and I'm super excited. Nagaraj, I want to thank you for your time today. I just, like I said, the vision you've painted is exciting, and we are so excited across the foundation to be building the Internet of Careers with you. We're looking forward to engaging more, and thank you so much for your insights today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Look forward to continued collaboration. Thank you.